All right, hello and welcome to the CREEDCAST. My name is Dave, and as always, a sincere thank you for joining us. We are here tonight to preview a massive clash before we head into the bye as your Port Adelaide Footy Club heads into a near sold-out Thursday night football matchup against the Carlton Footy Club in what's looking like it could be a wet and wild top eight encounter between two teams looking to make their mark as a legitimate contender in this year's competition. 7 p.m. Thursday evening, Adelaide Oval and Garnerland. Let's fucking go. Jamie, you're back from the Sunshine State just in time to get drowned at the footy. How you going? How was your trip?
Thanks, Dave. Hi, everyone. Yeah, trip was fairly relaxing. It was good. Was it 4 or 5 nights? And yeah, got off the plane a couple of hours ago, and just resettling into Adelaide life now. But no, it was a good break, and good to see the boys got the job done on Saturday afternoon while I
Mhm.
was here, there, and everywhere. And yeah, looking forward to a pretty important game tomorrow night.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting that just before we get into the preview of tomorrow night, and we're recording this at just before 4 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon, by the way, so we don't know the lineups yet when we get into that, just to put the
Yeah.
time marker down for everyone if they're like listening and going, why aren't they talking about exactly what's been listed? But we'll get to that later. But yeah, it's nice that the boys kind of matched your relaxing holiday vibes with what it started off a little bit, as I said
A
on the
relaxed
podcast. Yeah, but yeah, not so relaxing. And then even towards the end of the
relaxed. That's
yeah
how it
second
came out.
quarter, it was just like, bloody hell, are we going to be into one of these fights again that we shouldn't be in? But no, by the end of it, they did match the holiday vibes and really just had a nice little stroll in the park in Hobart, um, which would have been nice to see since you're on holidays. You didn't need any stresses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned to you off air that for the most part, I actually watched some of it live. But obviously, yeah, moving
Mhm.
around and whatnot, getting from A to B to C on Saturday. A lot of what I watched was once it was all said and done. So
Mhm.
yeah, while I don't have an emotion filled uh, kind of knee jerk reaction or anything like that, a response to what unfolded on Saturday. I think the song that you attached to the full time score and then the name of the review podcast, we
Mhm.
took care of business. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty much what it was. Disappointing that kind of slow to get out the blocks and we had to kind of work into the game a little bit. But yeah, like you said, a couple of times, North Melbourne have been a bit more lively, although winless still.
Mhm.
They seem to be turning up in first halves, I guess.
Yeah.
This year, leading Freo at halftime, pushing Essendon up until halftime the week before, and whatnot. We could have been a bit more professional in some of our passages of play, particularly in the first quarter. But I think did we? I think we won every quarter still in
Mhm.
the end. Anyway, third quarter was great. It's
Yeah.
kind of fill your boots type stuff. You know, JHF just blowing out of the blocks, and then Butters getting tagged, and it's flipping at halftime. Just a testament to our strength, the strength in our midfield. I loved Asava's game. I
Mhm.
thought it was a real chest out kind of game. Uh, Harkening back to my comments when Alir went down a few weeks ago, and Asava had to be the big boy. And my question was, whether he would take that kind of essence throughout the rest of the year and playing against a formidable forward in Larky, who doesn't need very many chances to hurt you. Thought he had played a fantastic game, and it's one of those ones where you go, all right, you're playing last on the ladder, but you've still got to do the job and do the job against one of their better players. And I'm sure every Port supporter appreciated what his return was, Asava's that is.
Mhm.
Todd, love seeing Todd fill his boots. Saw a lot of negativity still after the game about him doing it against a good opposition, and I swear he has on multiple occasions in the past. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just where your headspace is, just be happy for the guy.
Yeah.
He's done the job. Whether again, last place on the ladder, whatever. You got to do it still, and particularly from where some of his shots were, uh, looked in good kicking form, which is I guess is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that Dave in the review podcast, I'm glad he brought up the goal assist numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Considering that I brought up Todd's goal assist against Hawthorn.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like there's value everywhere. It was a nice percentage booster. We see ourselves third on the ladder where we, probably should be up to this point. And yeah, with a bit of confidence going into a pretty important game just before a bye. So yeah, overall fairly happy, fairly content with what I saw. And yeah, probably a third quarter that I'll watched a couple of times and leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the last minute of the first quarter, and then the third quarter is like where the good watching's at. Because I think we were
Yeah.
down by a point until like the last minute of the first quarter, and they would kick 2 goals in a minute, and which kind of showed that when we turned it on, they were just no match for us. So yeah, no, it was a fun one. It was nice to relax. Nice to relax over here for once. I got to actually go to sleep earlier because I wasn't stressed out at the end of the game. I
Yeah.
kind of watched a bit of the next game and then just went, all right, cool. I'm sleepy now because I kind of
Yeah.
relaxed throughout our game rather than being
Yeah.
high tension right the way
Yeah.
through, which has been pretty much the story for
What
six.
everyone expected from the Hawthorn game. We just got a
Exactly.
week late. And well,
Yeah.
I mean, with Hawthorn's performance against Brisbane, it kind of franks, if that's the right word, like yeah, our tussle with them the week before. Good
Yeah.
vibes though. Good vibes.
Mm. Yeah, no, I tipped Hawthorn this last weekend as well. Unfortunately, I was eight of nine on my tips, and the only one I missed was the Geelong GWS one, which was a coin flip at the end of it anyway. So,
And
um,
a good mark
yes, yeah, that was
away
great.
from yeah.
hmm Which hopefully we'll see a few.
I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily happy with it though, because for all the plaudits that we received from beating Geelong, we started this run and now it kind of it seems a
Yeah,
little less valuable. But we broke a hoodoo, and hoodoos in
yeah,
sport are hard to break.
hmm
So I'm still cheering that we got the job done.
yeah,
Of course,
yeah. It's just that
where we
they.
sit on the ladder could be very different had we not. But yeah,
mhm.
yeah.
And then,
Um,
conversely, as you said, the Hawthorn result last week looks better when we now look at their last 6 weeks and go they're 4-2 in those 6 weeks.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Good call.
even though we didn't want to have to come back and win it like that, well, you take it when you have to, when that's the only option. But yeah, it's funny how you look back on results like the Essendon one, back in gather round now looks like a
Gathering,
really
yeah,
fucking good win, doesn't it?
yeah.
Which hopefully we're on our way to another fucking good win tomorrow night at
True.
Adelaide Oval. It's another prime time matchup. The eyes of the AFL nation. It's going to be the only game in the land on the night, so which is really really fun. We've had a lot of night games at Adelaide Oval this year, and yeah, this one's going to be one that obviously with the Carlton Nuffies on board as well for it, and I say that somewhat with my tongue in cheek, but just with a genuine respect for the fact that they've got a similarly rabid fan base that
Mm.
demands results and has a proud history and sometimes gets a bit ahead of itself as some similarities with the fan bases, I guess, in how we can go about things.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
they'll be
it's
well supported at the
mhm.
ground tomorrow as well.
Yeah. No, I know. I can just immediately think of two people I know that are Carlton fans back in
Mm.
former cricket teammate and then another cricket teammate's wife as well. So it's um, yeah, there's plenty out there. I think my mum, when she was younger, was a Carlton fan too, as like her default
Yeah,
VFL team when she was like,
yeah.
growing up
It's
in the
like
60s, 70s. Um,
right.
yeah, I don't know why. Like, she didn't give me a reason. She was like, yeah, that was just them. So,
Yeah, I know a lot of people in like the 80s and early 90s because of like the SA players that
hmm
were playing it for Carlton. There's a lot of South Australians who that's kind of the reason. But
yeah, whether it
yeah,
be Bradley, Kernahan, all those guys that went over
yeah,
there.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and icons of the club and the league, and they came from South Australia. So, yeah, no, it's a club steeped in history and in a similar position to us with a long drought now, and well longer than ours, but in a position where they're trying to really stamp their place in what is a really, really, really tight top eight as well. What was it? The Hawthorn game, if we'd lost, we would be outside the eight. As it was, we won
yeah,
and ended up in the top four. So, it's a league that is incredibly tight and even at the moment. The only team that's really broken away is Sydney, obviously, who, again, inexplicably could be undefeated if it wasn't for losing to Richmond. So it's just a league that does throw out some surprise results. But with this game against Carlton, I think both teams will be coming in with eyes very much on the task. Particularly for us, I think we, talked about it off air. We can talk, just to start setting the stage for the conversation. This is the team that knocked us off of our nice little winning streak last year, which for a couple of sweet months there, we thought we're never going to lose again. And then we go to Carlton last year and lose by, I think I meant to grab the score before, but 50 odd points, I think, in the end.
Yeah, it was. It was 18-14, 122 to 10-12, 72.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Houston had like 41 possessions. Connor Rosie was our second best on ground, and their goal kickers were Jack Silvani and Jesse Motlop with 4 apiece.
That's right.
So
yeah. Well,
very interesting. Like, just going back on it, very interesting stats everywhere. Again, frustratingly enough, we won clearance by 1 overall, and we lost contested possession by 2. So, not a embarrassment in those regards if you're looking at them in isolation, and somehow we find ourselves losing by 50 points on the 15th of July, 2023. So, yeah, our boys will be wanting to make amends for that.
Yeah, and I forgot that it was Silvani and Motlop that were doing damage on us. I do remember a few of those goals now. It's just like, when they popped up again, you're just like, again, this is just going to keep happening.
It's the Hoskin Elliott thing. Or,
yeah. Or
who are these people?
Blake Hardwick like the other week. And not that we knew who Blake Hardwick was, but it's just like these guys that kick bags on us for some reason. Yeah, so Jack Silvani is one that, obviously, unfortunately for him, he's not going to be one that we have to worry about this week. I think he did his ACL in the preseason, very early in the preseason, from what I remember. And yeah, obviously the weather is going to play a factor here too. I guess we can touch on that before we start looking at because I think that'll roll into talking about I think the weather in particular for us. Looking at their tool, that obviously dynamic power forward kind of duo they have in 2 very recent Coleman medal winners, which is incredible to think of, having 2 in one side playing at a similar level. Although I think not going probably as well as the last couple of years is it Mackay in particular? I don't think has been kicking quite as well.
No, I mean, his kicking overall, I think, has improved in comparison, to last year. But Curnow is the outright leader for the Coleman medal, and on 33, and Mackay's on 25.
See, that's still pretty good. Yeah.
I think he's still in the top 10. Mackay. But there's a clear leader out of the 2, for sure.
Yeah, you'd still love to be in a position to have two forwards in the 20s and 30s. So yeah, with the weather, obviously we touched on it before about your possibility to come from Sunshine State to drowning, but Bomb has 100% of a chance of rain tomorrow for Thursday, so that's 4 to 10 mil, which, as you said off air earlier too, looks like it's going to be mostly morning and afternoon, but that could carry. We don't know how. We know. Both of us growing up in South Australia, we know how these things can change pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Particularly winds are going to be 30 to 45k winds in the evening as well. So that could be a factor, particularly if the ground is quite greasy from a day of rain as well. And if there is probably going to be some showers around, I would think, because the showers are continuing through to Friday. So you think they're probably just going to be around a little bit as well. So looking at that, and starting off, we're going to kind of go through the lines of our side and the matchups at the moment. Starting off, looking at our defense and their forward line, we, as you touched on, talking about Asava's form recently, particularly with his really good game against Kangaroos, and has been. I think we've both been probably pretty happy enough with how they're tracking the last few weeks and kind of they're gelling as they're going forward. And I talked about it with Dave last night as well, that and he very much gave him plaudits for the fact that they are coming together at a rate that we're probably, expecting. We knew there'd be some teething
Yeah.
issues, but they are coming together and Asava's certainly starting to look like he understands his role down there and confident. Zerk Thatcher has been one that we've just enjoyed probably since right from the start, his application and certainly his athletic ability to defend back there as well. Asava's done a job, as you said, on Nick Larkey, which, as you said, it's the last place team, but I think I made a comparison to Jason Gillespie's 200 against Bangladesh
Yeah, he did.
all those
Yeah.
years ago. Larkey still kicked goals in 29, 30 games in a row. So
Yeah.
there's plenty of teams that could have stopped him before that, but we were the ones that did it. So just like Gillespie against Bangladesh, no one else did it. So
Yeah. That's
um,
exactly right. And like I said, like with Larky, he's a very accurate kick. So
mhm.
he doesn't
You've got
need very many chances, and he still didn't kick one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so looking at that, as and we mentioned a few weeks ago too, Asava did a pretty good job on Tom Hawkins, and he's starting to really kind of feel like I have that confidence that he understands. He knows that he's got a trust from the coaching group and the team to do a role, and because that's probably what's held him back a little bit at Geelong, that he didn't probably was in the back of his mind fighting for a job too. And now Port, it's like, no, the job's yours. Here's the tools. Go out and do it. In the first few weeks,
Yeah.
yeah, it's getting used to the structure and how everyone's actually going in game rather than on paper and in situational training and whatnot. And now the last few weeks, he's really showing that. And this is now that we've seen that for probably 3 to 4 weeks now. This is the opportunity for him and Aaliyah and Zerk Thatcher as a unit, and then the smalls around that. Because we brought up a stat last night that there is some good stats around what we're doing as a transition going forward. When we're on, it can be very hot and cold because sometimes you just see them
Yeah.
they look like they can't get through, but then we'll blaze through the corridor in the next quarter.
Sometimes it
But
seems a bit. Sometimes it seems a bit predictable,
mm-hmm.
looking at it. But I was surprised to see that ladder of kick-in conversion. Was that to scores or to goals? I can't
It
remember.
was just two inside 50s, so it's just
Two
to
inside 50s.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
right.
So it's you're getting it from a kick in down to your to a potential scoring
Yeah.
opportunity. Yeah,
I think we do have pretty good conversion inside 50s to scores,
mm-hmm.
like a few more goals.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I actually, just on that, I did think we
Mm-hmm.
kicked pretty well overall, set shots
Mm-hmm.
against North Melbourne. So, and I think the same thing for the Hawthorn game.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on it in that review, where the more of the behinds were coming from snaps and general play and things like that. But I think our set shot goal kicking the last couple of weeks has actually been fairly good. So touch wood that continues,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if it is going to be wet.
Mm.
But coming back to
Back
defense,
back to the back.
Asava, just his attitude, like his demeanor, I think was a thing that stuck out for me against North Melbourne. Like I said, it was a bit of a chest out, like it showed a bit more purpose, kind of, and his body language was a bit different, which stuck out for me. And it's good signs. Like you said, it's been a steady incline in terms of that cohesion. But it's one of those lines that, apart from Aaliyah getting concussion and Lockie Jones, who is, a half-backer,
Mm-hmm.
like it's been a fairly untouched line for ours over the first half of the season. So they've had plenty of opportunity to gel, and it does seem like it's all kind of coming together a little bit. And it's certainly interesting because, Carlton's one of their key identifiers are the fact that they've got, two Coleman medal winning forwards, two Twin Towers. And I guess this is the type of game that we recruited for, to kind of ensure ourselves for, if you want to say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll just be interesting how those matchups will manifest themselves throughout the night. Because while we can say, because Kerno and Mackay, they're fairly like athletic,
Yeah, I was.
There's not like a bulky forward and an athletic forward. They're both excuse me, they're both fairly mobile. And
Mhm.
I mean, Mackay chops out in the ruck himself. And yeah, so yeah, it'll be interesting
Who they go, like who they match
who they
up
go
on
to
first.
first. And I would imagine that it may be a rotation. Hopefully
Mhm.
not for the negative, but it may just be a case of like, yeah, who's in what position
Kind of like
at this
a
point in
half
time. And
half zonal, but also man, like because they're probably going to want to stick pretty
yeah,
tight. But yeah, they also
well,
just
particularly if Mackay is
situational. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, particularly if Mackay is chopping out in the center ruck, you know,
Yeah.
Radical Lear's not going to follow him, or Alir's not going to follow him, or Zerk Thatcher. So
Mm.
yeah, that's where the changing of hands will probably come. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of sitting here and I'm like, well, where do you match up first initially? Because you probably still go, well, Alir's probably our best defender overall,
Mm.
but I would imagine they'll probably want to free and you would go height, Asava and Alir, Perno and Mackay, but I actually think they'll give Zerk Thatcher a first go at one of the two and
Yeah.
keep Alir as the interceptor. And I have no issues with that
Mm.
for the reasons that you mentioned before. His start to the year in particular, but he hasn't necessarily dropped off. He's quite accountable, and um, I'm
I
not.
put it into the Sweeney for this last game. Like his, it wasn't
Mhm.
even his man, but he came from a yard or two back on Larky, who was leading into space, kind of right out, directly in front forward, 45 meters out, and Zerk Thatcher was able to get close that gap and affect the spoil around the body, which usually ends up in a push in the back. So his abilities in that kind of situation against a key forward like that. Yeah. I mean, my immediate thought was what you said was, Isava to Kerno, Zerk Thatcher to Mackay, and then Alir free to, because Alir, I think you've brought it up a couple of times, and I've certainly agreed that he is sneaky decent as a,
Mm,
if he has to do the one-on-one defending thing, but that's not what we don't want him to have to actually be doing that for most of
yep.
the game. You want him free to be able to have his eyes down the field for looking for those balls coming in and being able to get into those positions to intercept and then start that offensive push going forward and rebound out. So yeah, that's obviously the two tools, and yeah, that'll just be it'll come down to really all the stuff on paper. It still comes down to the night, and it'll be interesting to see what
Yeah,
how that weather and the conditions. If it does lighten up, then at least that might help them. But I still think it'll be pretty greasy, so
yeah.
that will be
And for
interesting.
me,
Mhm,
it won't be a matter of like the whole Lockie Jones, Darcy Fogarty point that I made a few weeks ago, where one of them might start the game hot and it will cause us to maybe shift the magnets a little bit. It's a little bit,
mhm,
yeah, it's a bit different in that regard because of just this dynamic that they have versus the dynamic that we now have. And that's the art of coaching in the modern game,
mhm,
is that the matchups all you could make a case for one of our defenders to go to a specific forward, but at the end of the day, they're still, world class. So,
mhm.
yeah. But if that's the case and one of them does start hot, again, art of coaching is trust versus change.
Yeah,
And
trust that you can get
but
back into
because
the
of
game. Mm.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I just quell that momentum a little bit. If that is how it is, I just I obviously hope that we jump out the blocks and uh, bang on a few fairly quickly. But just another thing I was interested in looking at was obviously everyone knows about their two pillars,
Mhm.
but who's kind of sitting under the surface of them two in terms of goals, and their next best forward is Matthew Always, who you know yeah, no one outside of a footy nuffy or a Carlton supporter would know a lot about Owies, but he's just, yeah, he's their next best with 16 goals. So that mid range for this point in the season. Obviously, our leading goal kickers are Willie and Todd with 17, and then DBJ with 16. Charlie the next best on 13. So we're getting a bit more of an even spread across this first half of the season, whereas it seems that apart from a big game for one of their small to medium forwards, like they shifted Zach Williams forward last game, it just
Yeah.
seems that, they're taking on a high percentage of their goal kicking, and then, always in the Mosquito fleet is chipping in, obviously, week to week. So does that, that's what again, for me, it's what makes this matchup pretty vital and but just very interesting as a football fan, is if we do, affect their supply up the field, which I'm sure we'll get to, and kind of quell the influence of particularly Curnow, because he's the hotter of the two.
Mhm.
Is that going to seriously impact their ability to score? Particularly, because they're having to shift the magnets around and facing a few injury battles themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting, particularly with as you mentioned, Zach Williams, I think had 4 goals last week, which is
Yeah.
a career best. Just adding a little bit of necessity and moving the magnets around, as you said. Obviously, I assume Fantasia's probably in line to play again too. I don't think he got injured, which is
The journo asked Ken about Fantasia in his press
did
conference.
he?
He kind of just swatted away like he's not my
Yeah,
player to worry about anymore, kind of vibe.
exactly.
And so
Yeah.
the journo kind of framed it as if, Fantasia was in line to play.
Hmm.
I'm not 100% sure if he played last week.
He did. He was in there. He was in their starting team at forward. So
Okay.
that's what I
Yeah,
just
but
have
he's
that.
not
Yeah, he's not
he's not
lighting it
really
up. Or
having.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have
Is
seen
that a
some.
concern?
No, no, it's more like
uh,
I was thinking about going back to last. We were talking about last year a little bit, and the fact that we did. It was there a few of a couple of the likes of Jesse Motlop and co that got off
yeah.
the tether against us. Um, and particularly, we've talked about a little bit of times this year when it's probably part of the defense gelling thing. A guy like having 2 or 3 flying at once and letting a ball spill over the back, where one of the smalls of the opposition earlier this season has run onto it and had no one there,
Yeah.
no one goalkeeping, no one kind of situationally aware of what could occur in that sense. So that's where the likes of Fantasia or the Williams and Owies, as you said, would come into play. But we just got to trust in the structures and everything. And I think we have done a fairly good job with that. Obviously, the first quarter against Hawthorn was rough, but even against the Kangaroos on the weekend, they never got a real run on us. It was just more that sometimes they had control of possession for periods there, but they didn't have too much luck going forward. Apart from just we made the mistakes. Their first goal was our mistake, and then there was one where it's
Yeah.
kind of slacked off in defense, and they were able to chip it around and get it to a forward, and clear open space. So again, it's going to be application's going to be part of it, and if the application's there, then we're a long way to where we want to be already, which is good. Yeah, no, I'm strangely not as. This is probably a bad thing too, if I'm not as. But I'm just. I'm kind of.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I
Don't
guess
say it.
Yeah, I won't say. I'll frame it like this. I'm nervous about this game, obviously, but I'm really excited for the opportunity to see Asava and these guys and this defensive unit of those 3 together go up against them, because that's kind of like over the last few weeks we really have seen it gel, and Asava's gotten into the votes the last week, and
Yeah, I
BZT
would
was
have put him in my
earlier.
votes if I
Yeah,
was, doing it too.
yeah, and so we've seen kind of some of those concerns from earlier in the season. Then they're still going to be there because it is still a developing thing, but this is kind of the first game where I've really started that with a big test game that we're coming up to that I'm pretty starting to feel pretty happy about where the defense is at as far as their development. And so I'm excited for the opportunity. Nervous as hell about the game, obviously, as I am for most Port games. It's just natural when you're,
Yeah. Like you said,
yeah,
we're on the national stage. So,
yeah. But
um,
I'm. It's nice to have that excitement for that contest and that intrigue that goes along with getting to go up against one of the probably the premier dual threat tall forward line, being that
yeah.
they are,
Yeah, absolutely.
both of them are Coleman medalists and what they can do and the damage they can exhibit on a defense that isn't on switched on. So that's going to be the challenge, and I'm really excited for it. I don't know if you had any other notes and things that you were looking at in the defense before we move to the middle,
Well, I was just thinking that
or
if
move
it
to the
is going to
forward
be a
line,
wet
actually.
game,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
If it is going to be a wet game, then obviously territory will come into it. It'll become a territory game. Yeah, where our application in the Hawthorn game should have been
Mm.
more territory based from the word go. So yeah, your Houston, Burtons, and Farrells of the world of our team specifically
Yeah.
will need to
They're our world.
will come into their own with their kicking ability and their meters gained being pretty vital in that regard.
Mm.
I obviously am very comfortable with two of the three. And yeah, hope Burton comes to play this week because he's been, a bit up and down this
Yeah.
year. So, but yeah, if it is wet, they're obviously going to need to be accountable for some of the small forwards that we mentioned,
Mm.
but really utilize their skills by foot as we rebound and kick in, as we mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I audibled and thought it might be fun to go to the forward line first, and then finish off in the center, because I think that's probably going to be the most intriguing battle of the day. Um, but we could bounce between as we talk about the specific needs for the forward line as well. We'll probably bring in
Sure.
some of that forward center stuff. But yeah, we're coming off a weekend with Ted, apparently Todd. Got his kicking boots right back on again, and as you know, we've talked about it a bit over the last month or two. That some of the concern with him was sometimes he looked a little bit off with his body, but on the weekend he looked really like I don't know what happened going into that game,
Mm.
but he looked really. It looked like the Todd of a couple of years ago. Sadly, we've lost Willie Rioli out of the forward line for the next at least you know, is 2 to 3 weeks. I think they've got listed, which could just potentially just be this week because we've got the bye coming up.
Yeah, I think
So
Ken even said that it's likely just to be the one game due to the break that we have after
cool.
this match.
That's good to hear. He didn't look overly proppy when he was walking in the rooms. He
Yeah.
just looked a bit dejected. So, um, yeah, I was watching the test series on Amazon, like about the
Yeah, I
cricket team
started
from
watching
last
that
year,
too.
and yeah, when you see a calf that's done badly, like Nathan Lyons was, yeah, then you sit there and go, really, Rioli's isn't too bad then.
Yeah, that
Um,
was sad.
oh yeah, no, that was a rough watch, that one. Just an incredible hour of TV watching that whole
Yeah.
test there. um, but I digress. Yeah, so Willie Rioli's out, and obviously Connor Rosie, who, geez, the luck that because obviously he's comes into the midfield chat too, but he played down forward. He got popped down forward last week out of necessity because he just decided to have a circus kick at a
Can't catch
ball,
a
and
break.
yeah, which is
I know.
I love his
He nearly
application.
kicked. He nearly kicked DBJ? Was it
Yeah,
DBJ who was coming forward? And yeah,
I
he
did.
nearly kicked him too
Yeah,
in the same process, or whoever it was. It was a poor player.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
and then
but,
yeah, rolls his ankle as a
mhm.
result.
Yeah, so he won't be moving through the forward line either. Willie Riola is out, but uh, Charlie Dixon likely to come back in from the sounds of things. I assume.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
imagine them going back on what they've already said just because it might be a little bit wet.
mhm.
Um, if he's due to come back, he's due to come back.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think there's anyone that's coming in. Like I think Dave said last night, just chatting about the Sandful side. I think he said Ollie Lord's not quite there yet.
Nah.
So even if you were going to try someone that was, depending on how your Dixon was tracking, it's just there's no one else to try, so you might as well throw him in there.
Oh, that
Um,
FC NFL buy just really put a spanner in the works for Ollie. It's just, yeah,
yeah,
again, like the whole reserves thing that's
hmm
come up. It's just stupid.
yeah, you need to
Yeah,
be.
he misses a one game buy, comes back for one, and Ken in his press conference yesterday said like they want him to play a block of football before he's considered for AFL.
Mhm.
But yeah, like apart from Dixon this year, and some comments that we've made in relation to his ability below his knees, which historically has been very good for his size. I think Todd, Jez, and George all have quite a good ability to play the ball, pick up the ground balls and work with the ball below their knees. So,
It was Todd and Jez. I mean, it was above the head stuff, but it was them involved in that DBJ snap on the last weekend, that like the tap back in from the line from George Yardies, and it was a quick tap forward into DBJ's hands from Jez. So that was kind of that after the ball's, when the ball's in contest and in dispute, kind of quick thinking stuff. Yeah, it's not ground level stuff, but it is kind of speaking to what you're saying, is like they have that ability to
got to be nimble.
Yeah, be nimble and quick thinking as well, rather than just your traditional forward that's just looking to lead into space and take mark. Like this is they play the modern game as well. So
that's why I think that just chuck a whole tub of Grippo on Charlie's hands, and if they stick in the air, they stick in the air. But then the rest of the forwards that we have are formidable enough overall with their craft that I think it'll offset the nature of our forward line being tall on paper. I think it's more the small to medium forward mix that is a query, like I wonder, question mark around it.
So I do wonder around the selection around that, because obviously Lockie Jones is going to probably come back in, I would think. Or does Francis Evans I think is in reasonable touch in the Sandford. I think he had 20 odd disposals last week. Like the Sandford side's just not traveling great, so it's hard to kind of got to
gauge.
because if they're getting smoked by 10 goals every game and not getting enough opportunity to score, so you kind of look at Frank Evans getting 20. I think he had 21 disposals.
I think they get rotated through the midfield just so they can get their hands on the ball.
But then it's hard to actually get a read, and even if probably for the player themselves, they're like, they're always going to put their hand up, but they're probably not exactly sure what kind of form they're in either, because they're having to chase arse the entire game. So,
absolutely.
So the selections there are intriguing. Obviously, as I said, you think Jones comes back in, because I think he was actually, I thought he was pretty reasonable when he came on last week, a lot earlier than he was probably expecting to, but he came on and played all right, I think. I
don't think he put a foot wrong from what I saw. First game back for a couple of weeks. After playing probably his best game of the season in the showdown, where he got injured. So he'd be wanting to, come back to that as quickly as possible.
And it would be my intrigue around the forward line is like, particularly with the mix with Rioli out, and is if some of those magnet flips that we did last year, where the magnet flip that's ended up permanent in Darcy Byrne-Jones going forward, and we saw Ryan Burton spend a bit more time up forward last year as well at times, which is probably, I think I said last year, I think that contributed to his downslide in form, because he just hasn't got back to his Ryan Burton, that good form since he started going up forward. So I don't know exactly what the answer is. It depends who does come in. And as I said, we were recording this before the side comes out, which is, I think, an hour and a half away still. So we won't see it before we finish recording. But yeah, I don't know what is your kind of, just when you're looking at the possibilities, do you see someone like, even Narkle's available? I think Narkle's available. He played last week. So I don't know.
I think that was his first game back after he's had a fair chunk of time in facing his own injury battles this year. So I don't think he'll be considered for selection. There's some talk among fans about potentially debuting an Anastasopoulos.
Dave was,
which is interesting, especially
Dave was speaking glowingly last night about him too.
And I listened to that, like I told you off air. I listened to it on the flight home, and it was good to hear Dave's comments about some of those players in the SANFL team. And Dave's comment about him maybe having a bit of cheek and something like that about him,
which we love that.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry. That was another thing that I liked with the North Melbourne game in regards to HORNE-FRANCIS, was that last year, his first game against them, he kind of just kept his nose clean. His season as a whole was hampered by his lack of preseason, but yeah, I loved his cheekiness and
Hmm.
yeah, his chest out kind of performance, just getting because he seems to be at a point in his early career where he's just absolutely backing himself and his ability, and particularly his set shot goal kicking, because he was already giving it to him for Charlie Comben before he kicked the goal. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
love that. I forgot to
Hmm.
mention that before. I wanted to mention that. So yeah, who doesn't love that
Hmm.
for a player on their own team? As long as you can obviously back it up with something, whether it be goal kicking or out and out forward pressure.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, so look, the Francis Evans seems like the obvious choice. A lot of people wanted him back in early doors this year, but it's kind of softened a little bit, I feel, just my
I
kind of
think
vibe
it
from a
purely
fan's perspective.
it purely depends how Jed McEntee's going. If people don't notice him, then they start calling for
Mm,
his head. But if he's
it does
kicking
seem that way.
if he's popping up with his goal and as well as just doing everything he does do every week anyway, but people notice the goals
Yeah,
and then obviously the tackle that helped score the winner against Hawthorn was Jed McEntee as well. So yeah, he's kind
yeah.
of there's that like danger rating, like fire danger rating with Jed McEntee. Like if he's doing one or two things that actually stand out rather than just doing what he does well anyway, which you and
Yeah,
I
that
understand that.
goes,
But
yeah,
yeah, it
under the
goes, yeah,
radar.
yeah. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think the Frankie Evans talk cooled down, which it's unfair on Evans and McEntee that they're kind of combined in that discussion because they can both, provide possibly, particularly in this moment of need. But I just don't know what that does to the mix because it's probably clear that we're going to go with Dixon, I think. And then obviously you can't see Jez coming out because he's going to be the chop out for Soldo, who's coming back in, which we'll
yeah, yeah,
we'll get to
absolutely.
that.
Yep.
But and then Mitch, I think, while he's still trying to find his way back, and he kicked 2 goals too last week, missed. I think he probably missed one that he should have gotten. I'm trying to actually
Yeah.
just do a mental recall now, but he kicked a couple.
Yeah, just having
Obviously
shots on goal.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
you can't
unique, yeah, he kicked 2 goals too, like in a 59 point win. Like we're not going to complain too much, and he
when McEntee
and
had 3 shots on goal.
um,
So I noticed that McEntee was playing a bit more up the field. I don't know if, yeah, they're kind of grooming him to maybe, yeah, play a bit higher. He had 17 disposals, so
mhm,
I'm not sure if he was necessarily doing a job. Again, I'm watching it without emotion and yeah, haven't really delved right into the game against North Melbourne. But I thought that was interesting because there's some of the vision that I did watch. Well, yeah, I'd watch most of the match, but that I was paying attention to. Yeah, he seemed to be around the midfield, which is
mhm.
interesting. Again, he might have been following someone and doing another job. But
Yeah, and it
but yeah,
might have
he
been
did have
partly,
3 shots on goal. Would have been nice for him to kick 2 goals, 1 as opposed to
yeah.
1 goal, 2. But
I wonder if that was
um,
partly because Rosie did get thrown down,
yeah,
to sit forward. So whether McEntee they say, well, you've got to move up a little bit,
yeah, because I
something like
think he
that.
did play a bit higher up for Sturt prior to him being drafted.
Hmm.
Obviously, mostly forward, but in some of the vision that, like the highlight reel that the club brought out when he got drafted, it did seem that he kind of played a bit higher at stages for Sturt. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
People who focus more on the SANFL can correct me if I am wrong, but that's interesting. But I actually like the experiment with Rosie playing more forward and then rotating through our other damaging mids.
Hmm.
And I mean, Wines is in the goals now, so it just adds another layer. So, look, if I'm going to make a call, I would say Dixon and Frank in for Willie and Connor.
Hmm.
That just seems, just body of work in terms of selection. It just seems the way that they'll go. Debut would be energetic. It'd be
Hmm.
nice. We haven't debuted anyone apart from a club debuts perspective this year. Um, so that would be nice, but I don't, yeah. You
It
obviously
doesn't
want,
seem like the right game for that one, but Ken can
yeah.
throw Dylan
He
Williams
does
coming
love to
in,
play the kids. Yeah.
and Dylan Williams coming in for
Whoa.
Sydney
Yeah.
against remember when Dylan Williams got announced for that game and everyone was
Oh,
like,
man.
what the fuck is he doing? And then 2 weeks later, it was just like, give Dylan Williams a 2-year deal or something like. So we'll see in an
Yeah,
hour and a half, and I'm sure we'll react to it on Twitter when it
yeah.
happens.
I
Yeah.
actually think that considering that we have a bye, I would hope that we're pushing everyone a bit harder for
Mm.
this game. And we were saying, I think it was in our chat off air, that it's like a 16 or 17-day break that we
Yes, we
have
were.
between
Yeah.
this game and the next. So I actually think, and I'm just looking at time on ground against North Melbourne, and particularly JHF, Butters, and Wines. JHF was 82% time on ground. So, maybe he spends that little bit more to
Hmm.
rotate forward, because I think that's a necessity in this game, is him
Yeah.
up forward, particularly out of those three. But Butters 71% and Wine 76% against North Melbourne. So again, with the break that we have after this game, I'm probably looking to rotate them through the forward line more and
Hmm.
keeping them on ground more. Hopefully not to the detriment of their midfield crafts, but they're all seem to be in a vein of form where they're all kind of kicking goals now. And Wines is a hard matchup. JHF is a hard matchup. Butters, we know what he can do forwards. So
Hmm.
that's where, you've got a bench. So although, again, we might seem tall on paper with Dicko coming in, we can just, increase those rotations. Midfielders going forward, forwards on the bench. Um, Knowing that we have an extensive break in mind to
Yeah.
come. So, yeah, yeah,
It might be
that's
might be an intriguing one as to what they do with the sub position, as far as if they want to be able to, flip the script, because we've seen the tactical sub really utilised this year, with particularly in the game against Geelong with us. It was what Geelong did. Was a real, a
yeah,
real usage of the sub to
that lever.
change, yeah, pull that, yeah, as you say, pull that lever to change the game. So it'd be interesting to see what we do in that regard. If that's something we look
Mm.
at as a potential, kind of, get out of jail free card if we do try something and it doesn't work. If we've got someone that they've got in mind as, well, if this is what
Mm.
we need to do, then we can flip the script.
Yeah,
Um,
because I can't
yeah.
imagine they would want to put Jones as the sub again.
Hmm.
Um,
That's what I just
it
think
was
he
an
has to
interesting
come in.
call to
Hmm.
begin. Yeah, to begin with. So it probably will be a small forward or something. Mead can't be subbed. Like, he's just in too good a form in the
Hmm.
rotation, and
And he's
particularly like if
and he's genuinely good as well. Like, he's
yeah, yeah,
providing a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly if they do rotate those three midfielders that I mentioned, yeah, Mead's going to be more important to chop out in the midfield
Hmm.
and stick with that rotation. So yeah, the sub will be interesting. It probably generally comes from the forward or midfield mix. So um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
I'm terrible.
I have no
I
idea
used to,
where
I
they're going to
remember
go with that.
a few years ago I used to predict it a little bit more, but now I'm just like, it is such a the sub role has changed as they've
Yeah.
adjusted it over the years. And now it really is just a
I'm
yeah.
a big advocate for five on the bench.
Hmm.
They designed the rotation cap to try and fatigue players, and surprise, surprise, there's more injuries in the game. So it's
Yeah.
just dumbassery from the AFL. Yeah, just make it a fifth on the bench.
Hmm.
Some some people from days gone past are just like, well, there used to be two on the bench and blah blah blah. Are they going to put it out to six and whatever, or seven, or is it going to end up like ice hockey? It's just, yeah. There has to be a cross section where interchanges, injuries, and then
Yeah.
how many on the bench, that there's a sweet spot. And
Yeah.
this is kind of a
Soccer.
tangent.
Yeah,
But yeah,
soccer when it first started was, then the offside rule didn't exist. There was sometimes trees in the middle of fields, and then the sub rule came in and it was only one sub, then it was two and three, and now it's five, and sub windows
yeah,
now as well. And
yeah,
it's what happens. It's
yeah.
the sports evolve with the
So
times.
yeah,
Players don't also like smoke cigarettes at halftime either now, because
yeah. Well, and
they're more athletic. So we've got to go with the
yeah,
times and recognize that the game's more athletic. So we need to reward the
yeah,
players. But
yeah. And
and
if you want a fast product, but you're reducing the interchanges, like you have to look after the players. And yeah, I
Yeah.
prefer not to be discussing who I think will be sub.
Hmm.
Just as a general note, like, but yeah, I'd just prefer that player to be on the bench,
Yeah. Just be
and
able to
be
pull
able
that
to
leather.
rotate through the game.
Hmm.
Uh, Still probably have just as good a product, and it'll be quick still.
Hmm.
But
I think
yeah, sorry, did you have another point
no,
on that?
no, no. I was just waffling in my head about the sub because I get twisted about.
Yeah.
I get
Well,
you
and
know
there with
just
Zerk Thatcher being named the sub the other day, it's just kind of like, well, anything can fucking happen
yeah,
in terms of the sub. So yeah, who
yeah.
knows? Who knows?
Um,
But um, I have one more note on the forward mix. If
mhm.
you do, you have anything else?
Well, no, I was just looking at their defense, the guys in there because I think McGovern's been in pretty good form, and so it is going to be again. It's the other way going, particularly with Marshall going off a good game. I was just going to say it's again another intriguing. It is a game that I've looked across the lines, and when we get to the midfield in a moment, it is again I'll be saying this is really fun and intriguing and exciting, and I'm nervous about it. But yeah, it's yeah, it's going to be. Obviously, I mean Dixon coming in as well, but yeah, just I'm really nervously excited for this game to be honest. So, but yeah, to go ahead. That I
Yeah.
nothing of note really from me.
Yeah, it's a good call. Obviously, yeah, Wiedering is class.
Oh yeah, I
Anyone would
love
love to
Wiedering.
have him in their team.
Hmm.
And yeah, McGovern, he knows how to play Adelaide Oval and play against Port. So uh, yeah, they'll have their work cut out for them because it is fairly small to medium apart from them.
Hmm.
I might be wrong, but they've got some role players who I don't really recognize that much around them. So that yeah, they'll have their work cut out for them because we are
Yeah.
a fairly evenly spread forward line. I think our it's interesting just listening to other people's perspectives. Um, I think we rate our forward line better than some other Port fans. But yeah, I just think it's an even spread, and yeah, anyone can kind of kick goals on their day, which is damaging in its own right.
Hmm.
Um, and so with that in mind, them having the two and McGovern, I think would prefer to play loose rather than be accountable. And if we can have to make him accountable, then again, that's another window for us to gain some ascendancy on the
Hmm.
game.
Particularly,
Every intercepting defender, even Darcy Moore, in games that he's been made to be accountable, has been some of his lower rated games in recent times. So yeah, yeah.
interesting to see what role Jed McEntee plays in that too. You know, we saw what he did
Oh,
the
I'm
other one.
glad that you said that because that was my next point is that so now every week I'm looking at everyone's kind of half back. They're damaging half back, and I think that he needs to go to Nick Newman because
Hmm.
Nick Newman has uh, been quite formidable. And just looking at last week's game against the Gold Coast, um, he had 22 disposals off a half back, but he went at 100% disposal efficiency, which is
But you know me and
very
disposal
interesting.
efficiency over 20 if you're having 20
Yeah,
disposals and you're operating like
absolutely.
that,
That's a theme
I'm
for
getting
sure.
excited.
Recent. Yeah, a 389 meters gained for him.
Hmm.
So uh, it just kind of screams to me 10 marks for Nick Newman. So it just screams to me McEntee Pest game,
Hmm.
like Pest Aficionado magazine. Um, he has, for me, knowing
Hmm.
what he can do and how he can affect the game in that position. For me, he has to go on Newman
Hmm.
and treat him like he did with Tom Stewart,
Hmm.
because I think Newman can be susceptible to a bit of mental gymnastics and kind of uh, get in his head. We can get in his head.
I think Carlton are a team in general that just are in that position now that they're still fighting for that respect. So that kind
Yeah,
of
well,
yeah
and
to frustrate them.
Ken
Yeah.
Hinkley apprentice as their coach.
Hmm.
You mentioned about Chris Scott's comments about us being an emotional team. I think Carlton, funnily enough, under Voss's tutelage, are also a bit of an emotional team too. So
Hmm.
again, it just adds to the intrigue of this contest. a fairly balanced team in Carlton, which I mentioned in our preseason shows, and us now finding a bit more balance with the cohesion of our team and our midfield, which we'll get to next, coming into their own without our captain, of course. Yeah, going back to Nick Newman, I think he's susceptible to a bit of pressure getting to him. He can also apply his own pressure, and I think he's done run with roles himself for Carlton, but it seems that they're keeping him on that half-back line. And that's right in Jed McEntee territory of late. So I'll be looking for that. I noticed that, in terms of jobs, LDU, it seemed Port Adelaide didn't take my advice on him, and he got away. So, but I'm not surprised. He's a champion.
Yeah.
And unfortunately in a shit team. But yeah, McEntee, I hope they're looking at it. I really hope they're looking at it, because it seems to be the way of the modern, like Tom Stewart's season has just been derailed since the Port Adelaide game. So
and you want to kind of see that.
I don't know how you can not look at that now. Each game, who's their damaging halfback, who's our accountable forward, and I really want to see it. I really want him to be a pest again.
Yeah. I think it'll really be helpful if the week off for Dixon has helped him to be, if he has gained a little bit, because he was, you and I have talked about it a few times, that he looked a little bit slower and lumbersome than he usually does, because he is sneaky good at his best with his ground game and his just speed as much as a power forward can be. If he is actually closer to the Dixon that we need, and then will require the likes of McGovern or whoever's around him, those key guys to be accountable for him, and then McEntee's making doing the job on Nick. It will open up a few avenues for whoever's down there running through the mix. So obviously the big one being space for Marshall, and then George Yardy's being able to get a little bit of running and leaping space. Like George Yardy's obviously loves the contest because that's where he takes his big marks, but you need some space and not so much congestion. So it's going to be a really intriguing battle down there. And I'm glad we're on the same page with Jed, because I was just thinking that when I was looking at their side, I was just like, wonder where Jed's going.
And just
he must love that too. Like I reckon he must love.
Well,
he looks like the kind of player that's he's flourishing because he's been given that responsibility, and he's just like
Just with Jed overall, it's very interesting. Again, what white line fever does to you a little bit, because apparently off the ground, he's a very shy and humble type of person, but he crosses that white line, and his pressure is one of the key features and why he gets picked, and now adding a bit of an extra string to his bow, being a bit of a pest. I absolutely hope he grows into that role and revels in it, because it just adds a point of difference too. Like not everyone has a pressure forward who can slip into that role if need be, and you love a point of difference. It's what's going to help you in the long run.
All right. So I think if you have anything else in the forwards, but I think the rest of our prism of what the game is going to be won and lost by will come from the middle, which it is two formidable midfields coming up against each other. We've got two 29-year-old Brownlow winners in Patrick Cripps and Ollie Wines coming up against each other. And then you've got the youth, although Kane Corn sadly doesn't get his Sam Walsh versus Connor Rosie battle that he probably would have liked. But I just find that amusing, because I think that everyone's right in that discussion. But I like that Kane leans into the trolling of it. But that isn't to say that we're missing it. Obviously, we'd love to have Rosie available, but he won't be. But obviously, with the likes of Butters coming through, Butters, HORNE-FRANCIS, Drew, Boak just quietly going about it as well. As we
loved his game last week.
Yeah, it hurts my soul a little bit that I didn't get him into my votes.
Yeah.
Like I struggled with it, but
Yeah.
I couldn't not get. Yeah, it was anyway. I love Trevor's books because I've noticed the last couple of weeks that you got him into the votes against Hawthorn, and Dave got him into the votes, and both weeks I didn't. And I'm like,
Didn't, yeah.
do I have a subconscious bias against putting him? But I don't because I love the bloke.
Yeah. No.
But
Yeah, you're
uh,
this, yeah, soccer mum who just had a million things on her plate and forgot to pick the kids up from soccer training, and it's raining, and then yeah, you'll never forgive yourself.
yeah, it's just Boke standing there with his backpack on in the rain, looking sad
Yeah.
as I fly by holding up a cheeseburger and placard with the votes on it again. Um,
Yeah.
but no, he's been yeah. So and it's not like they're all operating through that, but there is the rotations through and the running ability that we've got against their midfield that obviously is very very formidable as well. I think the point to start at though is where it all starts, which is at the centre bounce. And
Sure.
we have big Ivan Soldo coming back in after a few weeks out with an injury after a really good start to his career at Port Adelaide. And we were really happy with how he was going. He was tracking well in the statistical categories as well, keeping us right near the top of the AFL and hit outs to advantage and giving our midfield a good look at it and just, and the strength in midfield, and as well as his around the ground work, we were quite happy with him popping up with a goal when he needed
Yeah,
to, and
absolutely.
the rotations through, being able to move around. I obviously we're happy with what Vicentini did against Geelong, and then Jordan Sweet last couple of weeks, or last week, but they didn't stamp their role, and obviously Soldo has been, while we don't know what the selections are yet, he was training with the ones, is what was reported last night, and it's probably pretty obvious that he's
Yeah,
going to come
yeah,
back in. I don't know if there's been any. I haven't seen any press conference stuff from today yet myself, but I assume that it's all leaning towards that, and it's
yeah.
pretty
I
obvious.
think
So
the larger opinion is that he'll come back in.
yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah,
think
and but
particular.
just before we talk about the matchup,
Mm,
I do kind of feel a bit sorry for Jordan Sweet. Like,
hmm
yeah, obviously I was of the opinion that he should have come back in against Hawthorn,
hmm
and yeah, now he's
I think you were vindicated in that too.
yeah,
So yeah,
and that yeah, that he got left out, and he came back in, thought he performed well against Tristan Cherry,
he
and
did.
now it seems that our number one's back. So yeah, sorry, sweetie, but you're gone.
hmm
Yeah, yeah. Again, not unhappy. Our three rucks are, yeah, awesome, all in their
hmm
own right. Um, and yeah, but just wanted to touch on, yeah, the feelings for Sweet.
Yeah,
Um, hopefully it
pretty.
fuels him, and he'll get another opportunity, I'm
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, just
I
hope
was.
he
Yeah,
stays in a good mental space.
I was reasonably happy with his game last week, but yeah, it's just at the moment it would also be unfair on Soldo to, if he is fit, to not come back in based on what he provided us early on in his run earlier in the season. So, and we're coming up against Tom DeConey because I think just scrolling back up in my notes, I know Mark Pitnet's, yeah, he's not available.
Yeah, they've gone
He's not
back to
available.
him.
Yeah, it's only a few weeks away, but yeah, he's not available this week. So, and Tom DeConing, he's had some good games, some 30 hit out games this year, but his average hit outs per game is, just under 20, whereas, Soldo for his season's been just around 30. So I think just based on what DeConing's game is versus Soldo, I think this is an opportunity for us to have. I think if Soldo's on, I think this could be the opportunity to actually have a dominating ruck performance. Maybe not dominate, like dominating. Some people might hear that and think, well, we are actually going to smash the shit out of him. I don't mean that. I just mean have the ascendancy and
Yeah,
give our
by a
midfield
margin,
for
by a good margin. Mm.
yes, yeah, and that's what and because we've been sorely starved of that the last couple of years. Last year in particular, even in a good run, we were losing the hit out battle a lot and relying on our midfield kind of just, the structure working and, picking up the scraps from the opposition ruckman or just having the pressure to get the clearance anyway. It would be
Yeah,
nice to be on the other side of that and get, your ruckman getting the tap doesn't always work to your advantage, but if you're pretty confident in it and the structure around it, and our midfield's been really quite dynamic this year, and as far as how it's structured up around, there's been some talk about how we've, depending on the mix in there, how they space out to give themselves space to run onto the ball. And certainly Butters last week with his goal is a good example of just someone running into it
it's
and
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just incredible. The guys, the different skill sets we have to run through there to complement Soldo to get back to the point. This week will be really interesting, but obviously the counterpoint is they've got some elite guys running through their midfield as well, and that's going to be the battle. So, but yeah, my first point really is just the key thing that I was looking at going into. Not that we've structured up when talking about our key things, we're just naturally rolling into them, but I was really intrigued by once I knew Soldo was coming back in, who his matchup was going to be, and then when I looked into it, I was just like, this is an opportunity for us to finally start having some ruck dominance kind of games because we've, as I said, ever since Lycett's knees started falling to bits, we just haven't had that. Yeah, which is,
Mm.
considering we had years as recent, I mean, 2017 is a fair while ago now, but, we were having all Australian ruckman years before Ryder started getting injured as well. And yeah, so it'll be nice to just start getting back to some good ruck because we've history of some rucks in our over the years we've had some good ruckmen over the years. It'd be nice to get back to that dominating kind of stuff
Yeah,
again.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we touched on it after the Geelong game, I think, about just that refreshing nature of having several ruckmen who are all formidable
Hmm.
in hitouts to advantage. And my note on the likely Soldo versus DeConning matchup, excuse me, was that DeConning is that more athletic type of ruckman,
Hmm.
whereas Soldo probably leans towards more the bulky type of ruckman.
Hmm.
But I mean, Soldo has still shown his ability to jump and work around the ground as well. But so center bounce probably in particular is interesting for me because that's where your athletic rucks can probably
Hmm.
take an advantage in terms of the jumping aspect of a center bounce. Again, the weather, how that plays out on the night.
Hmm.
If it is a territory battle, then maybe they'll be wanting to try and jump over Soldo and punch it forward. But the game against Richmond, where I thought Soldo tried to wrestle Nankervis early, he then kind of expanded a little bit in the second half of that game and was using his kind of athletic ability to good effect too. So
Hmm.
that's an intrigue for me because, yeah, what they have under them is quite damaging. And, yeah, that midfield mix is going to be amazing. But interesting. Soldo played 3/4, I think, of the SANFL game in total.
Hmm.
It was arthroscope on his knee. So yeah, how a full game of AFL will look is interesting. But then to chop out, then having the athletic ruck in to Koning and then Mackay chopping out, similar to the Geelong game with Finlayson and Marshall chopping out, it's where that kind of evens out a little bit too.
Hmm.
It's not like they're coming up against a Lloyd Meek or a Jared Witts like De Koning did last time. So, yeah, it's where Finlayson, I think, will be able to impact a little bit more around stoppage, not coming up against the beast, which will be interesting in terms of the second ruck nature of the game.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, hoping Soldo hits the ground running in his return game again prior to selections being posted. But yeah, uh, we're expecting Soldo to be picked. So yeah. Um, hopefully he goes kind of straight back into his
Hmm.
pre-surgery kind of form and gives our midfield best use across the night for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that will be interesting as you touched on the weather as well, like what that does to someone coming back from a knee injury, kind of the heavy track kind of mentality from if you're betting the races.
Races,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, like so what that does as well. But I see it because obviously he's been out for a few weeks, but it wasn't a major injury. It was, as you said, an arthroscope. So hopefully he's I mean, all reports from the SNFL game are that he came out and was absolutely fine afterwards, like pretty good. It was as you said, 3/4. It was a managed return through the SNFL, but yeah. all reports were that he was fine. So I have been ruminating on this for a little while over the course of the past day. I was editing last night's podcast and releasing that, and already thinking about recording with you tonight. Um, who I wonder what the role of Willem Drew will be with such a just an excuse to talk about Willem Drew is
Willem
always
Drew, yeah.
is always fun to bring up. I wanted to bring it
Okay,
up to you.
if you insist.
Twist me arm.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
aching right now.
do you,
Yeah.
yeah, what, because I think we talked about it a little bit last night with Dave. I find it funny because I'm saying with Dave, and I have to
Dave and
acknowledge it.
Dave.
Yeah, it's the Dave and Dave show. Um, the midfield mix has been both a good and bad thing for us this year, because sometimes when we don't get it right, it's when it's a little bit, things get a little bit shifty in there. But
Yeah.
when we do get it right, and that's why Ollie Wine's been really impressive with his role through there. But then Willem Drew's just the jack of all trades, does whatever you need, and he finds a way to be effective. WD
Yep.
28, WD 28, and
Yep.
he with such a formidable matchup coming up, I'm wondering what.
That's such a like behind the curtain like inside joke. No one would care.
It'll be in front of the curtain
Maybe they will get soon.
soon.
Yeah.
But yeah. If you're listening and just you're intrigued, just watch this space.
What's WD-28?
It is everything. I've
Yeah.
and for a real deep dive, I'm thinking of the Philip K. Dick sci-fi novel Ubik, which was basically just this thing that was just available, that just did everything in that novel as the world fell apart around him. And but back to Drew, WT28. I wonder if there's any, because the go with stuff in footy is really intriguing these days, because we don't do it too often. Um, when we tried to tag Dacos last year, it didn't really work. Like, we just went away from it. It just doesn't seem like, I think
Yeah.
we try to back
That was
our
bad.
own.
Yeah. Bad
Yeah.
planning.
We try to back our own game, but with the evolution of this midfield and the guys that they do move in and out, and wondering where you see Drew's role in all of this. Obviously he's going to have a role, but I'm intrigued as to what levers we pull in that midfield battle to try to restrict, because I think we do back ourselves in just to overbear an opposition, but I think has to be some ceding of respect to what they can do as well. And
For sure. Or it'll be the
yeah,
Hawthorn game all over again if we
yeah.
don't show that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, it's a formidable mix that we're coming up against. And I'm sure you and the listeners will be shocked that I have considered Drew in my notes. So I watched I watched most of the first half of the Sydney versus Carlton, game, and James Jordan did a job on Sam Walsh that night, and it seriously impacted their midfield and Walsh's game overall. His stats in the end look okay, but on the night, he had to work very, very, very hard. And yeah, even in the commentary, they were making note of it constantly, and James Jordan stuck to him like glue, and it appeared to be a tick for Sydney in that regard. So I'm sure our coaching group would be looking at that, whether they pull that lever, because like Paddy Cripps is in seriously good form, and he's also rotating forward. I think he's averaging 15 contested possessions a game at the moment. So
yeah, he's their top rated player, and I think champion data, I think it would be, but and he's one of the top rated players in the competition, Cripps, at the moment. So
so obviously Sydney were going, well, we'll just go toe to toe with Cripps and just take out Walsh's influence or quell his influence, because he's a bit of a more of an X factor midfielder. He's got a bit of everything about him. So I imagine if we're going to replicate that, and Sydney are the gold standard at the moment, and
Well, the fact they were able to do what they did to them while doing that is like it can be done.
Mm,
Is I think the point.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
So us having a contested beast in Ollie Wines in our arsenal, I imagine they'll, yeah, again, if we're copying Sydney, get them two to go toe to toe, and we'll take out their next best midfielder.
mhm.
If we want to replicate what Sydney did, and it makes sense because I don't think Drew could go head to head with Cripps like as well as he could blanket Walsh, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
trust that if Drew
Yeah
was to
the
match
net
up on,
positive. Yeah, the net positive
yeah,
on one
yeah,
versus the other is you're getting more out of that one than
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
because I trust Drew to do whatever the fuck he's been told to do, and if he
Mhm.
is lining up against Cripps, he's going to get a hand in or tackle him with all of
Yeah.
his might. But yeah, like you said, net positive is what we're looking for, and yeah, I think that would clearly get us a better return. And with the form that Wines is now in, you'd back him in to hold his own in the contested portion of the game against Cripps, who's in some good form. And then let the rest of our mids just do their work, play their role around that, whether it be JHF exploding out the front, Mead linking up, Butters also exploding and
Mhm.
getting the ball into space. It's the wine, yeah. I guess you could say it's Wines and Drew who will be carrying a lot of that contested load,
Mhm.
and it would be, yeah. See again, yeah. LDU had what 35 disposals or whatnot. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
really
I
analyzed the game
mean,
properly, but it
the
just
thing
seems
is,
that Drew
I
didn't get given that role.
yeah, and I think they probably just as much like your point was correct, but I think it was also that they just knew that they if they in that particular
Just
game
win.
were going to
Yeah,
win if they just stuck to what they did well and
yeah.
tightened up the screws a little bit from that loose first quarter and half and that
Yeah, there's no need for it.
LDU gets
10 goal
35
win.
disposals like who cares because Sheasel was in and out a little bit he's clearly class like Sheasel was great but guys like Dersma only when Dersma kicked his goal sometime in the second half, he'd only had 3 or 4 touches, and this is one of like their top draft pick from last year, and someone they'd probably be expecting to get a lot more of the ball. So yeah, that was just not the game that was required because they didn't have enough guys going like LDU was, whereas this is the game that might be a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
It was interesting watching North Melbourne try to put a tag on Butters last week, and I wonder what magnets what Carlton are pushing to if they've seen any of that
Yeah.
stuff, and because
So,
we're talking about doing that
yeah.
to them, and if they're wondering because
Yeah.
that yeah it's it
They have Kennedy, who I think is their
mm,
kind of stopper.
mm.
Um, so yeah, again, like,
It's just
yeah,
bad.
it's just these matchups. Yeah, it's just
Hmm.
a great. It's from a neutral, yeah, perspective. I'm sure this is going to be a great game to kind of watch.
Hmm.
It's going to be a hot contest. Like, yeah, Sydney blew them out of the blocks in the middle quarters, particularly the third quarter in their
Hmm.
game. Yeah, just my skepticism of where we're at right now says
Hmm.
that I don't expect us to have that, particularly if it's going to be wet. Like
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
it was a perfect night for footy in Sydney when they came up against each other. Um, so yeah, the matchup in its entirety is tantalizing. So yeah, um, I think that in the modern game, coaches, it's just like, yeah, you can stop one of their best midfielders, but you really, if the stopper can't impact themselves, then you're really cutting off your nose to spite your face a little bit.
Hmm.
And whereas the benefit that we have is that we know that Drew can impact as
Hmm.
well as stop. Uh, so yeah, but I imagine like Kennedy's done jobs, and like I said before, Newman has also done jobs, but it seems that they're parking him on the half back line and getting him to positively affect their game that way. So, yeah, if they're going to do a stopping role, it's probably going to be Kennedy, and it'll probably, be a toss-up like it was against North Melbourne. So,
Mm.
who do you start on, JHF or Butters? Because both of them can explode
Yeah.
in our favour
And then
if
again,
the
as
opportunity.
yeah, last week I was really impressed with Jackson Mead just being able to pop in and out of contests and
Yep.
just be that run overlap guy or whoever was needed to be. Like his kind of not
Yeah.
that he's going to be inside and in the like and all that the centre bounce attendance all that contest that much, but he's just that extra far like got good pace on him and can run and can handle the ball well and. So we do have kind of those options, and obviously we have. Again, we touched on it before, but 35-year-old Boakes out there who's, a former almost Brownlow winner a couple of times and a bloke that obviously isn't going to be in that. But there is just, we have those options, those little guys that can run in and out of
Yeah,
different
we've almost
contests.
forgotten about the wings
Yeah,
as part
Burgoyne.
of
And
the midfield
we
group.
haven't even
Yeah.
mentioned the burgers because, yeah, you could do Bergman and Burgoyne or the Burger Brothers, something like
Well,
that.
because yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I know.
yeah.
I've referred to both as burgers. Yeah. So, but they also have Blake Acres
Hmm.
on a wing who, like Freo, would be kicking themselves that they let him go. Whether they had a realistic chance to keep him or not in
Yeah.
Perth is another question. But because his performances for Carlton uh, they'd be cheering with what they have brought in that
Hmm.
regard. So I think in that regard, excuse me, it's a big night for Miles Bergman.
Hmm.
Um, because I think I'm just looking at their lineups recently. It looks like Ollie Hollands has been playing on another wing for them, who's a
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
promising young player for them. So I imagine that we'll match up Burgoyne because I think Akers and Hollands are both right footers. I might be wrong. And our wings, now that Farrell has gone back, are all right footers as well. So
Hmm.
from a matchup perspective, it kind of makes sense to go Burgoyne and Hollands, young player versus young player, and then it's up to Bergman and Boak, like you said, to quell Akers' influence because he can make an impact on a game,
Hmm.
particularly if we're going to try and take out Walsh. They need goals up forward. Akers is
Yeah.
some of their runs. Akers typically features in. So like Bergman, if he wants to play on the wing, this is a key game for him to show what he can do offensively and defensively, playing on the wing. Boak seems like he's coming back into some really good form as of late, now that he's getting that consistent run of football.
Mm.
Um, so the wings in particular, if we're analyzing that again, another interesting quandary, more so Blake Acres for mine, and just how we combat his influence.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. So the more you talk about it, the more you go, they've got damaging players everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah. I
But
mean, they made it,
and we could say the
preliminary
same.
final last year. So again, you have to
Mm.
respect it. You
Hmm.
have to respect their matchups and yeah, it's Port Adelaide, we probably will. you know,
Hmm.
it's a big game. Well, it depends who you ask, actually. It's a big game.
Yeah.
Do we respect our opposition enough to, put our best foot forward early?
Hmm.
Um,
It is there is the night game at Adelaide Oval thing that hangs over us a bit now as
yeah,
well, which is just a
yeah.
weird one. Not that I
Just some
believe in
weird
any of that.
stats can come out. Yeah.
Because the other thing that people don't talk about, like, I mean, it is we do have a propensity to not be consistent in big games, but it is night games at Adelaide Oval are often going to be against good opposition too, so that's going to be part of it.
Yeah,
And
obviously, because
yeah,
the AFL wouldn't fixture
yeah,
it
yeah.
otherwise.
Um,
But our last game
Carlton,
was pretty good. Like
yeah,
Friday Night Lights, albeit this is Thursday, of course.
mhm,
Against Geelong, that was awesome.
mm,
So it's kind of the last one we've got to go off, and
yeah,
but I think particularly from the midfield and where it all starts. It's probably more of an ask in comparison with Geelong, because they're probably lacking without Dangerfield and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we had an
Yeah,
opportunity to
this
pounce,
is
and we
it.
did.
Yeah, because I mean they're missing. Yeah, Chera's not in there, and it's a few, obviously they're missing a few others, but they've had a few come back in the last few. Like they're not their injury troubles they were running through a few weeks ago. Because I think Sard only came back in a week or two ago, right, as well. So they're fitter than they have been at times this year.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I almost forgot about George Hewitt.
I,
Just going
I I
back on
I do
who
like
Daylight
him. I did
used to
see him.
stop.
Yeah, I do like him.
So it may actually be him and not Kennedy. Yeah,
Hmm.
almost completely forgot, because Hewitt is a great stopper in his own right too.
Hmm.
Um,
He just kind of gets forgotten in that mix, doesn't he? Because yeah,
a
um,
little bit, yeah.
yeah,
So they've got
um,
names everywhere.
yeah. Um, Speaking of, it's slightly adjacent to it. We've obviously had the news this week. The AFL have done what the AFL just decides to do at times, and this one's a particularly large one. Is have the just decide to completely change how the umpiring department's going to adjudicate holding the ball, which has been it's been just on a side. Well, it's not a side note; it is about it. But I've noticed that it is a lot more looser, but it's just because it is an evolution of tackling in the AFL as far as how players are dealing with trying to tackle without giving head injuries and whatnot. Um,
Yeah,
I haven't had a huge issue with it this year. Like that's possibly just me because it seems like everyone else does. I like both ways. I haven't had like I'm just like, oh, if a player's like if a guy has been swung around 360 because that came up a few weeks ago, like by us, and they've gotten a handball out, then my issue is usually with the Port Adelaide player is not wrapping him up well enough. I'm never going,
yeah,
oh, he's had
yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's had so much
Yeah, I don't have a
opportunity.
huge issue with that either.
I haven't had an issue with it, so it's an interesting one.
I think the
Um,
Hawthorn game for me was one that stood out because I think, excuse me, I think part of it, it's not even holding the ball, but it's if someone's been tackled
mhm.
and it's not going to come out, blow the whistle earlier.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Um, that's I think, while that's not a holding the ball decision, like if there's no prior, they've been tackled, just ball the ball up. Stop waiting so long for
Mhm.
something to happen. But yeah, holding the ball, yeah, if you don't have prior and the whole genuine attempt thing, yeah. Again, I don't know what to make of it. Some of it
Yeah,
you feel isn't too impactful on the game. Some you look at and you're like, yeah, that probably should have been paid, but I don't know.
yeah.
Can't
There was
say
a
that every year.
yeah. That's been my thing is I just haven't had a huge issue with it this year over previous years, and even this year I've actually been less. I've just been like the games in that sense in holding the ball. I've been more frustrated with the it's consistency of it, and there's been you and I have talked a few times in games this year. Like I've been more frustrated with some of the random ticky tacky stuff that umpires do, where they call like the double 50 and Rioli was is inconsistent
Yeah,
with them letting tackles go all the time. And like there's more of that stuff that I have issues with. But I haven't had too much issue with it, but the AFL head of
yeah,
officiating Steve McBurney has. Yeah, they've come out and they've sent a memo to teams that they're going to um, cut
yeah.
down the
Reduce the reasonable
reasonable
time.
time. Yes, I think
Yeah,
yeah, and you know, fine, whatever. But the problem is, we're the first game after this announcement. We're
yeah, yeah.
2 days after
I
they've
think
made
Dave
this.
Lloyd actually put up a tweet himself.
I
Yeah,
think he did.
so
Yeah,
yeah, tomorrow's going to be over officiated. Friday they'll pull back, but they'll still probably pay it more than usual. And
hmm
then Saturday, Sunday will probably be fairly consistent with the whole year.
yeah.
Yeah. But look,
Did you see the has the umpire made a mistake account? Just retweeted and said, "I'm going on a holiday."
yeah, I haven't seen that. I'm not
Yeah,
surprised though,
yeah.
because he'll be tagged a lot.
hmm
But look, marquee games, I say to my old man all the time when we're at, Friday night games in particular and stuff like that, the umpires, tend to like, this is my perception anyway, they tend to like getting their faces on TV as
Yeah.
well.
No,
Players obviously get haircuts usually, and
mm-hmm.
like to look good for the national audience, and
Bit of theatre.
just that cynical spectator aspect of it. You're just like, this umpire, he's just getting his face. It must be Friday night.
Yeah.
So I already expected some stupid ones to come up tomorrow night anyway, and this just kind of just says we kind of know that there's going to be some pretty some holding the ball calls that you probably go, that's a result of this. That's rule of the week kind of thing.
Yeah. I
it's
will
the only reason
say
they got paid.
it's probably good we're the home team.
With the noise of affirmation.
Yeah. Well, remember what was it a few weeks ago? The commentating crew, I can't remember which game it was. The commentating crew just decided to go on a 5-minute soliloquy about, and we're getting stats guys to look up the amount of free kicks Port and Crows had at Adelaide Oval versus the other team.
Yeah,
I can't remember which.
That? Yeah.
I feel like it was possibly St Kilda because it was I think it was a close one, but it was a few weeks. It was a little ways in the past now. St Kilda or Freo, one of those two, I reckon.
Ridiculous stat dive by them, but what I was going to say is that we know that it's going to be over officiated, probably particularly earlier in the game. So I just hope that we don't.
Who's going to be the one caught
give
first?
Up an opportunity. Like if we get done for a holding the ball that you're going off, that's as a result of this fucking thing, and you probably could have let that go. Let that be, in our forward line or midfield. But and I just hope doesn't result in goal kicking opportunities for Carlton. Because we know they're going to be there. And look, our defenders use the ball pretty well, fantastically well, actually. So just stick to your guns from our defenders' point of view. Don't overthink your possessions, and don't let the umpire make an over officiated call.
That is the thing at the end of the day, is it comes down to what you're doing, and a lot of. We have had there has been a few of the holding the ball calls that we've had this year have been, I think Butters got one in the last couple of weeks. It might have been the start of the last game, actually. It might have been Hawthorn. He got caught holding the ball. He did. Yeah, I think we actually talked about, now that it is flooding back into my memory, that we talked about like, that was the moment that we thought, this game isn't going the way we wanted it to start.
That was early.
Yeah. But no, it is just funny that this, it is a kind of a seismic change for the AFL because holding the ball is always. I remember my buddy Vince over here in Portland, like him, because he's a Port international member now and everything. He's been to a game. His one game was against Carlton, actually, back in 2019. Was 2019? Yeah. But yeah, he's over the years that we've been friends. I remember him texting me once, being like, "What are they yelling on the TV?" And it's just like he was talking about the ball shout that he's hearing on the TV, and he's like, so then I'm like, what is
that? Yeah. What are they saying?
And I said to him, I was just like, it's kind of like holding in the NFL, which is just a rule that just, it's vibes based. And he's just like, and that was probably 10 years ago that we and him had that discussion at this point. So it's funny that is a storyline that is the holding the ball rule is just vibes based anyway, and it's just and this is just going to make it so much more complicated, I think, which is the thing that I'm worried about a little bit. But it's not. It's also the fact that I just think it's going to be I just think
it's going to be inconsistent even over the round.
And
we're going to cop it.
Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it doesn't influence the result. And as much as I will, in the heat of the moment, blame an umpire if a close result doesn't go our way because of a decision, it's always at the end of the day,
Yeah,
when
let's
when you have
take it
that
out of
20,
their hands.
yeah, that 24 hours to recover, you sit there and go, we don't have it in that, in that spot. It's not like,
Yeah,
soccer is a sport that, sometimes I really put it down to decisions because it's such a hard sport to score. But in
yeah,
Aussie rules footy, you have opportunities. If we are at the point to be in the game with a couple of minutes to go, then we've probably had plenty of opportunities to put it away. So,
yeah. Agreed.
kind of like Melbourne, we had some issues with a couple of decisions here and there, but we also went, well, we should have put it away and not made it. It wasn't. It was in our hands at times in that game too. So that'll be the case, I assume, tomorrow night as well. And when we're at our best, we usually don't leave it up to the umpires. So we've just got to make sure we don't.
True.
Yeah. Um, yeah. What are your predictions for the game? What are you can do head and heart, or if your head and your heart are together, you can just do one. But
One thing that I will say before I make my
yeah.
prediction,
Any other?
it's just a very last broad point
Mm-hmm.
that it involves every line that we've spoken about, and it's in relation to the fact that we have more than a 2-week break until our next game. I hope that our pressure is off the charts for the whole game.
Yeah.
Akin to, how we were going in our 13-game winning streak last year was based off relentless pressure again and again and again and again. Like, we have no reason.
That just start against Geelong as well was just incredible pressure. It was just
There's no reason for us to not attack this game with the utmost intensity from minute 1 to the final siren, considering that we have 2 days and interest to recover. We'll know what's going on early, but that's a non-negotiable for me. I mean, because you can argue in other phases of the year where you can, it may be detrimental to go balls out pressure from go to woe, wire to wire, but this is a game, it's in isolation where Thursday night we want to gain some separation on the competition further to what we have, and we have plenty of time to recover from it. So that's my final point. With every line, just attack every contest with absolute intensity and leave everything out on the park. Pretty local footy kind of cliche, but it was the cornerstone of that run last year, which eventually became our downfall in hindsight. But this game in isolation, absolutely bring it. So
you got to look at it like you're getting a 2-week break to a prelim final kind of thing. Like, you can throw it all into the hat, everything into the ring and apply that pressure. And then particularly, and as much as you said, it's very local footy, but it is when you bring it down to brass tacks, like, footy is a simple game. Play hard, get the ball forward, kick it through the big sticks, and it comes out and
repeat.
And do that again 20 odd times, and you're probably going to win.
Because we're at home. This
in front of what's looking like a pretty good crowd, which there'll be
hopefully for a Thursday night. Yeah.
Well, they're saying it's close to sold out, limited tickets available. So
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's again the Adelaide Oval members who will on the day decide. So again, 35,000 is what I expect.
And
40,000 would be nice.
There might be a few thousand Carlton fans there too, being a well supported club.
They'll have a good showing for sure.
We touched on earlier, but
yeah.
So, I wonder if I reckon my brother will be there with one of
his random Guernseys.
Yeah, well, as I've said, I think I said to you earlier, I can't remember if this was on podcast or not, like, earlier in the year, that he won some season pass to go to every game at Adelaide Oval.
Right.
Out of drinking West End, so drinking is rewarded. Good message for the pod.
Drink responsibly.
Drink responsibly, and you'll win a season pass to Adelaide Oval. One of the cricket teammates that we're good friends with, he is a Carlton fan, so he'll probably be there in a Carlton jersey with him. So hopefully they go home sad.
I hope so.
Yeah. But yeah, it'll Yeah, particularly with the fact that it's a good crowd and yeah, the pressure rating against the Kangaroos early, they brought up the Fox Footy rating and we were right down the bottom and they were right up the top, and that's when we were in our worst part of form in that game. So, as you said,
Yeah,
it is, as much as it sounds very basic to say, bring the pressure. It is. We know that Port Adelaide, and I put it out on Twitter on the game against Kangaroos. I said we're not working hard enough at the point when it was really frustrating and we weren't looking like we were gonna. When it was looking like we may be in a battle for a while, I was just like, we just not working hard enough. And then when you saw that switch get flicked, then it was fucking easy from that point
looks
on.
much more
So
professional.
yeah, so and then obviously it's not going to be we could be high pressure and everything, and it'd still be a battle against Carlton, being that they are a good team. But that's what's going to be required if they
Yep.
do bring their A game to the game. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But yeah, so just off the back end of my point, I was just saying like we're at home. So
hmm
leading into like the predictions, if we're going to finish in the top four, we need to be winning the majority of our games at home. And
hmm
uh, have we? Who did we drop?
Melbourne we lost at home too.
Melbourne,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, but just looking at Carlton's form, like they've won 2 out of the last 5. They've gone loss, loss, win, loss, win. So their
hmm
form has been a bit up and down, and we won 3 on the trot. So I expect to win.
hmm
Like it's a home game. We're pretty healthy, albeit we're missing a pretty important or 2 important magnets in Rioli, who's our equal leading goal kicker, and Connor Rosie, who's our captain. But we're in pretty good shape, so it's going to be hard. And I expect it to be under 2 goals. The victory, I'd probably peg it at around 10 points.
hmm
But yeah, like Carlton are one of the highest scoring sides so far, but they're also one of the highest in terms of points against too.
Yeah.
So we'll have our
Leakiest.
opportunities.
Mm.
We need to make them count, whether it be in the wet or whether the rain has subsided by that point in time. But we need to go into this game confident. We're third on the ladder. We've been playing pretty good without being perfect. It'd be nice for this to be the perfect game. But if it's not, I hope we win the majority of the game and it leads us to a victory on the night. So yeah, I do expect to win. I expect it to be around the 10-point mark.
Yeah. I'm just going to go with what I did on my footy tips on the ESPN app for the cricket club footy tips. I always do when I'm not sure for the game that is the game of the round for the pick in the margin, which it is
Yeah.
the Carlton Port game. I just default to 21 points. It seems to work for me a lot.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to go with that. I just, 21 points. Your 10.1 might be pretty spot on, but it would be nice to maybe be out to, get out to a 4-5 goal and then manage it. And then if they kick a couple late or whatever,
Yeah.
that's
You're going, oh, well,
that's
not
my,
enough time.
yeah, that's my ideal scenario
Yeah,
is
yeah,
just to
yeah, for sure.
get them at arm's length and then manage the game through with, decent pressure and all that stuff and just not let them get the handle on the game. But it will be, I think it might be a game with a few runs in it as well. Might be that we have a scoring run similar to maybe hopefully not as topsy-turvy as Geelong was. I don't want to see us almost drop a 50-point lead again, ever, hopefully.
No, no.
But yeah, it might be. It's going to be a game of runs and as modern footy is a little bit. But yeah, we are favoured betting favourites, and I think that probably stands pretty true to where both teams are at. As you said, Carlton's run of form has been decent but inconsistent, and they've obviously dropping one to Sydney isn't one to scoff at, but it's also they dropped the one to the Crows, who as we did as well, and the Crows are just they're the Crows of the last 2 years. They can turn it on and then they can turn it off in equal measure. So
Yeah.
yeah, but we should be winning this one. It's at home. It's a Thursday night footy, and as you said, with a very very good long break that the players are going to get to enjoy a bit of time off before they get back into the training for the second half of the season. There's really no excuses for it.
And
So
Carlton don't have a bye.
yeah,
So
yeah,
again, I
and,
don't know if that plays any part in their intensity. Probably
mhm,
not. I don't know. I'm a
yeah,
nuffy. But yeah. yeah, for us, we
Yeah.
have to bring the pressure. No
Mhm.
excuses.
Yeah. Yeah. No, if we can go in at 9-3 into the bye, that'll be I'm giving that a solid A for a ranking for which we'll talk about kind of a kind of general overview of the
Yeah.
season. But I
And I
think if
think
we're going,
that's where everyone would probably, like at the start of the season, by the bye, if you said 9-3, that's probably where everyone
yeah,
would have had it
I
pegged.
think everyone would have flipped the Geelong and Showdown result in their heads. That's what
Yeah.
that was surprising, but yeah,
Yeah.
nine
With,
nine.
yeah, Melbourne and Carlton being, yeah, the games where you go, we probably should win, but it's still a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
9-4. Look, ultimately 8-4 isn't, yeah, yeah, it's not the end of the world, but
Yeah,
yeah, nine and
yeah.
three is where we would expect to be, and that's where I expect
Mhm.
us to be at the end of this round.
Yeah, and particularly with, as I mentioned off the top of the podcast, it is a tight top 8 this year. It's a really competitive
Mm.
um, competition where we're in the top 4 right now, but we could, in 2 weeks
Yeah,
of
well, and we're a
10,
game ahead of Melbourne in fourth, so
yeah,
another win against a top 8 currently opponent just
yeah,
shifts that a little bit further, and you know, Sydney are playing Geelong.
yeah.
Geelong would want to break their bloody loss streak. So yeah, anything can happen.
Yeah, there's going to be a
But
lot of
yeah,
shifts this year, but we want to make sure we're in position to take advantage of them rather than be the one that
yeah,
teams are
for
jumping.
sure.
Yeah. Anyway, that about wraps it up, I think. We've done a nice long
Yeah,
preview here, which has been fun. It's been nice to just focus on a game that's coming up, which has been a nice change to it. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Unfortunately, with the usual schedule, the previews will be few and far between. But yeah, it's nice to do something a bit different
yeah,
this week.
yeah. And it's given me the impetus to just like, 'cause sometimes I've said to you off air, and I don't mind putting it on here. Like sometimes when we're doing the reviews, I get so focused on the review that sometimes the preview that we do at the end is an afterthought, and I don't put much time into it. But now that I've done a bit of it today, it's kind of given me the okay, this is like giving me the structure in my
Yeah,
head, which is often just how I work. It's just I
yeah.
sometimes
We'll
just
see if some of the things we've spoken about actually come to fruition.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, we'll be back for a review of this one, obviously next week around the usual time, and probably around a similar time we'll just have an overall chat about how the season's gone to that point, which hopefully will be reasonably positive with a solid A rating, which is all to be determined a
Yeah.
little bit over 24 hours from now. So yeah, thank you for tuning in tuning in as always. It's 1 a.m. here, so my tongue's getting really tired. But yeah, no, we appreciate you listening and your support. It's yeah, as I said, really appreciated. Follow us on the socials at _ the Creed on Instagram, Twitter. One of those, it's _. I can never remember which one. Just look for the logo. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably know it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, search for the Creed and look for the Port Adelaide content that is associated with it. That is us. And that's about it. Follow and give us a like and subscribes on YouTube, even if you listen to it through Spotify or Apple iTunes, whatever it may be. If you just
Yeah. Give us some
pop,
love.
yeah, if you pop around all those those outlets that are easy to access, to give some likes and subscribes, it just helps the algorithms and makes me feel better when I see more notifications coming through as well. But yeah, no,
Absolutely.
the downloads have increased every week, which is really nice, and we appreciate the
Thank you,
support and
everyone.
yeah, support and comments, and thank you, Jamie, for getting off the plane and coming immediately onto a podcast. I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. I get a bit itchy if I'm not talking port week to week. So yeah, no,
It's
happy
like
to
this.
do it. And
It's like the Chappelle thing, like just like you
yeah, you
got
got
any?
any port opinions? Yeah. But yeah, no, thanks everyone for listening. Yeah, thanks for everyone who engages with Dave on the socials in particular, and myself if you are. Um, yeah, hopefully next week's another cheerful, tangent laden review.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. But until then, calm the fucking pair. Let's beat those Blues.
Go Port.